What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the single player Let's Play series. So I think we're up to episode 14 now, and yeah, I have a new building, so I'm going to take just a hot minute to kind of show a little montage as to how we put it together, and then we're going to do stuff with this episode. So, yep, prepare for montage now. Alright, so the purpose of this building is pretty straightforward. I want it for our machinery. So I don't feel like this little house that we have over here is the right place to keep all of our machines. I don't think there's enough space, and I don't think that that's really a very logical perspective to take on things. I think it should definitely be restricted to machinery type things. So yeah, I thought this episode we would take a break from our magic stuff. We've gotten a decent bit into Thaumcraft, and I really am enjoying this Cloud Steppers ring. It's really fun. But I still have to come over here and patch up a couple of things, like this under area here needs to be filled in, but I'll do that at some point. But I definitely thought that this area would be a very crucial part to having some little random machinery up and down these these little sections. So I figured 4 machines together in each one of these little chunks. Some of this would be automated, some of it not. So yeah. You can also see, based on the little F7 overlays here that you can see here, there is no darkness within here thanks to the arcane lamp that I crafted within that montage. So yeah, what do you think of this? I hope it's not horrendous. I really like the color scheme actually. It worked out relatively well. These are the only variable that I'm not sure about. I think they kind of match the color of the concrete, and they definitely match the noise pattern. Like, they've got the same kind of noise, but I don't know. So if these are absolutely horrendous, let me know in the comments. I've got a couple of other options that I could use in place of those. But I thought that this, for the most part, seemed like an interesting format with the factory blocks and the wood as kind of like a steampunk factory area. Because you remember last time we did a factory room, it was kind of portally themed, and it was not as aesthetically pleasing to the eye as I had hoped it would be. So definitely let me know what you think. We'll see what we can do about those factory plates that are kind of odd. So to get started, we're going to need to get power over here. As you know, that's going to require our usual step of HV wiring. So that I'm just going to do off camera because you've seen me do that a couple of times with the LV. Alright, so I think we have everything wired up here. I made another energy cell as our little input, and this seemed to be the only place that was reasonable for putting it. So, you know, not the prettiest, but definitely functional. So there's that. I reworked a little bit of the wiring here as well. So we originally had it coming up this side, but come to find out, with it only being over here, I didn't really see the point in that. So I just didn't. I undid most of that and just sent 2 wires down this other side instead, which I think looks a little better. Eventually, we'll probably stray away from the wires, but for now, I really like them. They aren't a bottleneck in any way, and I think they're personally just kind of nice looking. I forgot to mention, I also redesigned this place a little bit. I added some of these steel-framed glass windows and some factory block covers and factory blocks just to kind of make it look a little more industrial in here. It felt a little odd before with the marble and stuff. So, back to our main goal of the episode. We have power over there now, but now I'd like to craft up some machines. And you might be wondering which machines I'm going to go for this time. Well, we did Ender IO last time because that was most of what was available for us, and we also did a little bit of the Immersive Engineering Crusher, which is, again, what was available. I haven't done just outright thermal expansion in a very long time, so I think we're going to go with that. So we're going to be looking at the thermal expansion for a couple of utilities here. So I'm kind of getting tired of using the smeltery for everything that we need it for. So I'm thinking we're going to need a small list of machines. This list is actually not very comprehensive at all. We'll probably add to it quite a bit as we go, but for at least the early stages of crafting and kind of getting into the thermal loop, if you will. I'm definitely thinking we're going to want to make 4 pulverizers for ore processing and 4 redstone furnaces for ore process smelting. And then if we look into a metal press and maybe some extra machines like the magma crucible, and I think that's pretty much it. Magma crucible, fluid transposer, and not the metal press. It's called a compactor. The compactor will probably be the first thing we make, just because it would be the most useful. But we'll come to that decision once we get there. So for now, I think what I'll have to do is another montage while I get everything wired up with these hardened flux ducts. So give me just a little bit of time with the flooring here while I work on that, and I'll be back in a little while. Alright, so now that everything is wired up, we can, I want to say wired. It's not really wiring, but you know what I mean. Now that everything has a power route, we can kind of work on a couple of the machines that we're going to need these to take. So, I think the first thing we should work on, like I was saying, was the compactor, or, yeah, compactor. Why don't we look into 2 of these? We'll start with 2 of these, and so that's going to be pretty straightforward, actually. So we have some redstone reception coils. Actually, you know what? I'm just going to craft these and be back in a little bit when I've got everything done. Alright, so that should get us our 2 compactors. And we're going to want to get the specialization. So this is a gear working die. And that's going to be a piston, a lead plate, an iron gear, and a redstone servo. So there's our gear working die, and we're going to need to make, I just remembered that these require the upgrades, so let's go ahead and look at the thermal expansion upgrades. I don't know how many of these we've made at this point, but it's going to require some Invar and some bronze. So now we can craft both of our hardened upgrade kits, and these can be applied directly to the machinery, or basically any thermal expansion energy receiving device. So we're going to set this guy here with the augment for the gear working die, and now the only recipes that it will be able to craft are these gear recipes, which means that we no longer need any of our weird little gear patterns anymore, which is precisely useful because now I have to craft a whole bunch of machine frames. So that's going to be super nice. So the machine frames, I'm thinking we're going to need 8 at least. Actually, let's think 10. So if 10 of them, each one of them requires a gear, which is 4 each, so that would be 40. So let's grab these and come over here to the gear press, and I'm just going to let the compactor do it for me, because I'm no sucker. So each one of these, make sure that this is the right one. I might need to actually put an item frame on these to help me differentiate. But you notice each cycle is going to consume 4 and produce a gear. So it's not really saving us anything by doing this, except actually it's saving a decent bit of time and a lot of convenience, because this can be automated in the future. So I'm going to make a bunch of machine frames. I'll be back when I have, because that's going to be a bunch of steel, which I think I should already have prepared. So this is actually relatively painless. We've got all our gears together, we had plenty of steel, we can get 10 machine frames with no problem. So nice. So I want to look at the pulverizer or the redstone furnace. So these are the 2 machines that I want to look at mostly for the sake of their utility, and at this point it looks like we're just going to need a bunch of bricks, which is smelting, which is ironic because I actually need a better smelting solution. So I might actually focus on making one redstone furnace first, because that's kind of the thing that I need the most, is the ability to smelt without using up all my fuels, because I don't really have a lot surplus right now. And so why don't we make just the one for now and use it to help us make these others. And now we're good. So this gets us one redstone furnace. Now if we do some simple math here, we're going to need 4 more of these, which each one of these uses 8. So we're going to need a half a stack of clay to bring with us and cook up. So I think since this is another one of those manual processing machines, we'll probably put this over here, and I'm just going to put this clay in here and let it all smelt up. This will take a little while to heat up, but once it does, it's actually decently fast. And again, it's free smelting. We no longer have to deal with using our own resources for that. Our gears are already done, which is nice. And at this point, we just have to get a bunch of other random stuff, and I'll probably start working on a pulverizer real quick, since we already have everything more or less ready to go for that. We just need to grab a little bit of flint, and grab the rest of that, and we're going to need a piston. We're going to need a few pistons, so let's go ahead and make them all while we're at it, just so that we don't have to worry with it later. And I'm going to need... I'll go ahead and make those reception coils we're going to need as well, because I'm going to need those eventually, so may as well make them all. So we're going to need 5 pistons. We can actually make 5 of our pulverizers immediately, so that's pretty nifty. So I don't actually know what the setup for the pulverizers are going to be yet. I do think that they're going to be along this back section somewhere, but I don't know how that's going to really work out. Now, the pulverizer is fantastic, and you know why? It means that we don't have to use the smeltery anymore. We can get ore doubling now as well. So the pulverizer has a lot of pages, 58 pages of recipes. That's a lot of pages. Wow. I don't know why this is here. That item is disabled, but whatever. So if we take a look here, we can actually go through and see that certain ores... oh, that's an interesting compatibility layer. If we look at... here, why don't we just do this? At geolysis, we can take a look at all the ore clusters from geolysis. Well, the interesting thing here is that if you try to take any of these and smelt them, you can't. But if you try to take any of these in the redstone furnace, you can do a 1-to-1, which is fine. I mean, not very interesting, but definitely is a way to do it if you want to go that far. But more interestingly enough, you can pulverize it for 2. Now you can do this a couple of different ways, of course, with a couple of different methods. You can do it in the crusher, you can do it in the sag mill, but my favorite way is currently the pulverizer, just because it's a simple input-output with an off chance. So definitely a nice benefit of having a bunch of these. And like I said, the bricks are cooking up. They're actually almost ready, so we probably don't even have to make a cut. We're just about done here. I brought plenty of everything else that we need. So yeah, this has not been a very terribly long process. Now, I'm going to have to configure these in a little while, and when I do, it'll be an interesting process because, again, I'm trying to input and output on the same side. And I'd like to make everything as invisible as possible. I don't know that that's going to be remotely doable, but you just never know. So if I can, and I may end up having to use phantom faces for that, like 4 phantom faces here and here, which isn't actually the most unnecessary thing I think I've ever done. But if I end up doing that, then that'll definitely add for a nice clean looking setup. So I think to make it all kind of makes sense here, this row should also face this way, because I feel like this row and this row should coincide, just like this and this row should coincide. So I'm basically thinking that this first row is all going to be manual labor kind of stuff, manual machinery. This row and this row are all going to be together for automation. So for example, this will be all of our pulverizers for automatic processing, whether it be, I'm thinking, so this could be any number of things for not just ore processing, but probably recipe processing too. So then we can also have a whole bunch of machines on this side that possibly coincide each other, like the magma crucible and the fluid transposer, and so on and so forth. So definitely some interesting expansion potential there. But it's very nice that we already have a lot of stuff handled for us. So I'm going to come over here and kind of clean up a couple of things and move a couple of things over that we may not need anymore. And there's another thing worth noting. We have a lot of wall space in here. You'll notice each one of these sections we have these wall breaks. These are also good for machines too. We don't have to put everything directly in the center. But I do want to break out a lot of stuff where I can. So this may end up being purely for auto crafting after long enough, and these things may move to somewhere else. If you keep your chunks distributed as far as the amount of tile entity ticking you have, you end up in a much better place for overall performance in the long run. So I would like to, if possible, prevent overloading my this one chunk or a couple of chunks. I'm assuming it's probably a few. Alright guys, well, I actually have been taking a look at the time in between the video montages and all the stuff that we've gotten done today, because we do have quite a bit handled. I think I'm going to call it an episode right after this one last thing, so it'll be slightly long. I want to make an induction smelter, because that's going to make our lives so much easier for alloys in the future. So we have that Ender IO alloy furnace, or alloy smelter, I think is what it's called. But I want to make a induction smelter because it'll also make alloys, but it can also be upgraded. So that's the reason I want to do this now is because in between episodes, I will probably end up upgrading all of our machines to the hardened machine frames. That way we can get ourselves a little bit of progress here. So it looks like these are pretty straightforward to make. I'm just going to kind of toss some stuff away. That way we can more clearly figure out where we need to go next. And of course we'll need our usual tin gear and a whole bunch of steel. Not a whole bunch, but some steel. And our usual redstone reception coil. Let's see. So that gets us the reception coil, and we're going to need 2 pieces of sand. And this should give us everything that we need in order to make ourselves the induction smelter. Boom. So this guy, very straightforward. So this will allow us to make a whole bunch of stuff in the future. I hope you enjoy this episode, and I'll see you guys next time.